The New York Knicks are a pretty funny organization when you really think about it, because when you consider all of the different moves the team has made attempting to get back to competitive status that have backfired, you can't help but laugh. Being in one of the biggest markets in the country, the league as a whole is always better when the Knicks are good, but the problem is that the Knicks seem to always shoot themselves in the foot time and time again with poor decision making and leadership in the front office. Outside of a few good seasons with Carmelo Anthony on the team, it's been a very long time since the team has been a legitimate contender, and like they do every offseason, they reportedly have a plan to make some big moves this year as well. For today's video, we'll be discussing where the Knicks stand at the moment, what they actually do need to change to take a step forward, and the reports about some big-time players that they are interested in acquiring. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The mecca of basketball used to be the center of the basketball world, and the Knicks used to actually be a top team year in and year out. However, since the turn of the century, they have only made the playoffs 5 times in 20 years, and 4 of those 5 appearances resulted in first-round exits. Management has been subpar, talent evaluation and development have lacked, and overall the decisions made by those in charge have been highly questionable. Starting all the way at the top, owner Jim Dolan has garnered one of the most negative reputations in all of sports for just how terrible of a job he's done, and the worst part is that despite his consistently wrong decisions, he continually insists on forcing his way into decision making and undermining his general managers. In recent years, he's completely disrespected fan favorites like Charles Oakley, and he's hired coaches that probably haven't been the right choices. And going a few years back, his impatience has hampered the team's future in trades that he initiated, such as the Carmelo Anthony deal. Melo's intentions were clear that he wanted to be in New York, but the team gave up so many assets when they could have just had him in free agency that same summer that it limited what they could do with him. General managers that have worked under him in the past have typically only ever had negative things to say, and he surely makes their lives difficult because Dolan is ultimately the one that gets the final vote on what gets done. The toxicity of this franchise has led to them time and time again getting spurned by big-name free agents that they hoped they could attract to the Mecca and put them back on the map. LeBron James notably passed on them for Miami back in 2010, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant chose to team up in the other New York team last offseason instead of going to the Knicks, and in between there have been several other instances of them being passed on. The once storied franchise does not get the respect that it once did, and it clearly isn't as appealing of a draw for players as it once was. Yet once again, the Knicks find themselves in a position where they seem to be relying on a blockbuster move to save the team instead of going about growing a successful team organically. This brings us to the main topic of the video, where according to Mark Berman of the New York Post, the Knicks have set their sights on hitting the trade market this offseason, looking to acquire one of the 2 biggest names available, being either Chris Paul or Victor Oladipo. Chris Paul's time in Oklahoma City was filled with nothing but positives, and after injuries seemed to be slowing down his career 2 years ago, he bounced back strong this season and proved he still has a lot left in the tank. At the same time though, being in Oklahoma City is probably not his long-term plan, and after doing a phenomenal job mentoring Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Dennis Schroeder, he will probably be looking to move on. As for Oladipo, it was reported about a week or so ago that he wanted out of Indiana, and he'll be sure to have plenty of interest on the market, but according to Berman in another report, Oladipo has become the top priority for the Knicks in order to get back to win-now mode. Outside of the obvious reason that the Knicks would want these 2 players simply for being all-star caliber guys, they have strong connections to each of them within the organization that is likely to contribute even more to their interest in going after them. New team president Leon Rose used to represent Chris Paul as his agent before he took this job with the Knicks, and it's not exactly a secret that Paul was his favorite client. This would incentivize both parties to make it work and could give the Knicks a leg up. As for Oladipo, current Knicks general manager Scott Perry was actually previously with Orlando and was the one who originally drafted Victor Oladipo, and is still very much enamored with him as a player. Perry's history as a general manager has shown that once he falls in love with a player, it's permanent, and he will advocate for whatever team he's with to go after his guys. As far as what would need to be done to make either of these deals happen, the Knicks do actually have a vast assortment of assets at their disposal that could come in handy for negotiations. Over the next 4 years, they are in possession of 7 first-round picks, and players like Julius Randle, Kevin Knox, Frank Ntilikina, and Dennis Smith Jr. will all be in the mix to put into a trade package. According to the same Mark Berman I discussed earlier, who has been breaking these reports, the Thunder are intrigued with Kevin Knox, and if a trade were to happen, he would have to be the young player included in the deal. The Thunder are looking to restart their rebuild and get younger as a talent group, and for the Knicks, this really seems like a no-brainer. Knox has played 2 seasons in the NBA so far, and in those 2 seasons, he's been, and I promise I'm not exaggerating, one of the worst players in the NBA that gets minutes. His per-game numbers are poor, his advanced numbers are shocking, and just simply watching him play, you oftentimes come away so unimpressed. Of course, being a young player, you can absolutely attribute some of his lack of development to the toxicity of the Knicks as a whole and their inability to put young players in positions to succeed, but you also can't completely write off how bad Knox has been either. If the Knicks could cut their losses, especially if it gets them Chris Paul, it wouldn't exactly be the worst thing in the world. A similar package would have to be constructed to get Oladipo, with a pick or 2 involved along with any combination of the players I mentioned. But this brings me to my next point. Are the trades really the solution for New York? Will Chris Paul or Victor Oladipo really elevate them to playoff status? The Thunder were written off last season not because they didn't have the talent, but because before the season it was unknown if Paul would even stick around and buy in. He did that, and alongside him, the Thunder had a very talented roster with a good combination of productive veterans and promising young guys. The Knicks don't really have that at all, and outside of RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson, I'm not really sure they have many long-term quality players. Chris Paul would be a great mentor for sure, but putting the Knicks over the top would be a much larger task than putting the Thunder over the top was. As for Oladipo, he was looking like one of the best two-way wing players in the league 2 years ago, but the injury that hampered him this season has seemed to slow him down a bit. Obviously, he'll have more time to recover this offseason and work on getting back to where he was once before, but if that doesn't ever happen and he doesn't get back to that point, I'm not so sure he's capable of being the savior either. Overall, this will be an interesting thing to follow throughout the offseason because we know the Knicks always have ambitious hopes, but whether or not they can actually pull it off tends to be a completely different story. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the Knicks' plans for the offseason. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.